more attendees to come in, so we'll be beginning shortly. Thanks for your patience. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be. Welcome to our event, How to be Anti-Racist in Aid. My name is Arbie Baguios, and I, like many of you, work in the humanitarian aid sector. I'm the founder of Aid Reimagined, an initiative that hopes to see an aid sector that is more effective and just. It's been a crazy year for the world, especially over 2 weeks ago when a Black man in the US, George Floyd, was killed by the police. This tragedy has led to global protests led by the Black Lives Matter movement against anti-Black violence and racism. This has also reinvigorated discussions around anti-Black racism in all parts of society, including in the aid sector. There are now a fresh batch of new articles and analysis on racism in aid, in addition to the ones written in the past. The Guardian published an article with the title, "There is Still Racism Within Humanitarian Work." And this was half a decade ago, in August 2015. Today, we find ourselves confronted with an old but ever-pervasive problem. So we thought, it's time to talk. Our conversation today will be led by 3 amazing women in the development and humanitarian sector, and I'll introduce them now. Firstly, we've got Marie-Rose Romain Murphy. Marie-Rose is the co-founder of ESPWA Incorporated and of the Haiti Community Foundation. As an advocate for community-led structural change with over 25 years of experience, she has a strong track record in community development, humanitarian assistance, philanthropy, planning, marketing, executive leadership, social entrepreneurship, and consulting. Her focus and passion have been to create viable, sustainable pathways of development for low-income individuals and marginalized communities. Next, we have Naomi Tulay-Solanke. Naomi is a Liberian feminist, a human rights activist, a humanitarian, and the founder and executive director of Community Healthcare Initiative, a national non-governmental organization that is providing healthcare and social services to women and children in underserved and hard-to-reach communities in Liberia since 2014. She's also a founding member of MIR and the Feminist Humanitarian Network. And finally, we have Stephanie Kimou. Stephanie is the founder and lead consultant for PopWorks Africa. She is an international development professional responsible for communications and advocacy programs related to sexual and reproductive health and rights. She has extensive in-country experience in West Africa, particularly with building and advising advocacy strategies, infusing meaningful youth engagement into development agendas, and building relationships and partnerships with governmental agencies and the INGOs for locally rooted development solutions. But before we begin, I'd like to just set the tone for this event and offer 4 good faith principles so that our discussion can remain meaningful. Number 1, this is a safe space, particularly for Black, Indigenous, and people of color aid workers and colleagues. Any form of abuse will not be tolerated. Number 2, this is a frank and honest conversation. Some of the things you might hear may be challenging or uncomfortable, but we encourage the audience to use this feeling as a catalyst for further reflection and listening to Black colleagues, as well as Indigenous and POC colleagues. Number 3, this is a respectful and constructive discussion. This topic may elicit strong feelings. Nevertheless, let us please engage respectfully and constructively with one another. Number 4, racism and people's lived experience of racism is not up for debate. While we encourage challenging and constructive discussions, racism and people's experience of it will not be up for debate. As they say, this isn't just a safe space, but this is also a brave space to discuss this issue. There's a chat box where we encourage you to write your comments or thoughts during the discussion, but we'll also be monitoring this to make sure that it remains appropriate and free of abuse. Please remember to change the chat box so that it sends to all panelists and attendees. And we have a Q&A function on the Zoom webinar. You should see a button for it. Please use the Q&A function to send your questions. Other participants can upvote or downvote the questions. Later on, we will go through some of the most upvoted questions. Due to time constraints, unfortunately, we won't be able to go through all of them. And please do not use the chat box for questions. We will not see your questions in the chat box. Please use the Q&A function. And feel free to write your questions anytime. So for today, we will first hear from the speakers. Then the speakers will discuss amongst themselves. Then we'll have the Q&A session. And then in the end, we will invite participants to share the actions they personally will commit to taking to be anti-racist in aid. Just a reminder that we will be recording this event and sharing afterwards. We'll be posting the link later. And if you want to discuss in Twitter, you may use the hashtag anti-racist-in-aid. I want to give a quick shout out to Tobias Denskus, Alara Adali, and Andonis Marden, who are helping us organize this event and who will also be moderating the webinar. I hope that's clear, and I'll stop there. Now, let's hear from the first speaker, Marie-Rose.
Arbie, thank you for organizing this, and I want to thank my colleagues and everybody. It takes a village to make a difference. We can say that much. I want to introduce myself because I think it's important to have a little bit of a context. Thank you for your introduction, but I also want to give a sense of who I am professionally and not just professionally, but personally. And I want to focus on what I think is critical in terms of being anti-racist. I was born and raised in Haiti. And I went to study in the US and stayed after I met my husband in college. I have to say that I really didn't realize what I was signing up for. So it's been a humbling experience. That's all I can say. For close to 30 years, I have been working on community development and philanthropy from really a community-led and community-centered perspective. After the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, I got involved, frankly, with a focus on the structural change that I felt that my country desperately needed. Because we have an environment which is very much dominated by international organizations. And don't get me wrong, I am not anti-international organizations. I am just pro-local and locally driven development. Let's make it clear. So I got involved and I created at first, and it really wasn't because I was interested in creating my own thing, because no one seemed to be focused on structural change. The money was pouring in Haiti. And I started an organization it still is transnational, registered in Haiti, registered in the US. It's called ESPWA, which actually means hope in Haitian Creole. This organization was critical in terms of leading the Haiti Community Foundation initiative that helped to establish a Haiti-led, Haiti-based, and community-focused community foundation, Haiti's first community foundation. It's been a long haul, people, I'll tell you that much. But we did it the way we needed to do it, by starting with the community. Forget about the top down. I've worked as a community resource and organizational consultant with organizations and communities as a partner for community change. And what I can say is that my work and advocacy has been in the US, in Haiti, and the Global South. On a personal level, I've been now married for decades with a man who happens to be a white American of Irish descent. And my children are biracial and bicultural. And why do I mention that? Because you may be going to London and Paris and seeing a lot of mixed couples, and it's commonplace. In the US, it's still very much a taboo. It's still very much noticed, and it's still very much controversial. It is not easy, all right? And I came to this country in the 80s at a time where I'm dating myself, but forget it at this stage, at a time where, oh, for goodness sake, at a time where there were Haitian boat people, and we were being stigmatized, okay, as being carriers of AIDS. I remember being a student in journalism at Boston University, interviewing somebody about a blood drive, and she was complimenting me on my sweater, on everything, my jewelry, all that. And then towards the end, she said, "But don't you want to donate blood?" And I smiled and I looked at her and I said, "I can't, I'm Haitian." Because we could not donate blood for years in the US, okay? So what I will tell you is that it's very interesting because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't a spring chicken when I got involved in international development. I was an experienced professional, but still, as I got involved, it's like I was someone who had children, had experience, significant experience in executive leadership and everything else, in developing organizations, in dealing with complex politics. And I experienced and survived a wide range of discrimination in the US. Still, I was shocked by the depth of prejudices that I experienced in the international development and humanitarian sector. So what do they say on Twitter? Let that sink in, all right? So let's talk about anti-racism, because I have to tell you, I get tired of rhetoric, but some of these conversations, we need to have them frankly, and we need to, as much as possible, listen and be genuine and authentic. So we live in a society which is a social construct, all right? And it's dominated by a narrative, a certain narrative, which is very much mainstream. And very often we don't question it, even when we purport to be liberal. But the reality is that, okay, we not only need to question it, we need to deconstruct it. So I will give you some examples of narrative. Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. I will die happy when I see an article that doesn't say that, all right? Africa, let's help these poor African countries, clueless, subtitle, and the starving children of Africa, right? America, the birthplace of democracy, okay? This narrative maintains the status quo. The very same narrative, kind of narrative, that talks about the global South and countries and communities and leaders as being incompetent and helpless and constantly needing capacity building, endless capacity building. Getting a little sick of it, people? But so one of the things that you have to realize is that it's been whitewashed. Okay, whitewash to a point where we disappear and we are basically not just marginalized, but made invisible and whitewashed as, and wiped away as Black and brown people. So, and it's the same way, a narrative that erases local organizations' efforts and community strength is just as oppressive and frankly violent. When you go to protest in the Black Lives Matter movement, okay, protesters insist on saying people's names. And there's a reason for it, because this is about the systematic erasure, okay? So in so many ways, it is not about, victims, because we're not victims, we're leaders. You have to say our names. You have to see us. you have to walk with us. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be understood. I want to be appreciated. I want to be embraced. I want to be celebrated. Okay? Another thing as far as narrative and in terms of fallacy, I see people having a flinch when we talk about white supremacy, because automatically it's like, oh, here's the radical talk. Here's the Black angry woman. No, 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 no. Let's not go there, people. Being anti-white supremacy does not equate being anti-white. Some of my best friends, the man who loves me and celebrates me, they are white, okay? But they see me as human beings. And it is not, I am not, we are not anti-white. We are anti-white supremacy, okay? So when we are talking about, for example, the whole history being whitewash, the US, for example, systematic lootings and massacres of Black communities, they've been erased. In France, the Haitian Revolution is not taught in schools. By the way, it's not taught in the US or in other countries either, even though it's a major, major victory for Black people everywhere. It is not an accident. It is a construct. It is what I will call, in modern terms, the largest PR effort in the history of our world. So now the aid sector is also portrayed as benevolent and fighting for equality. While the statistics are showing us that only a minute piece of the funding and resources are going to Global South organizations and are there to support leaders of color. So don't be surprised when I talk about, and this is not radical, if you think about all this, that white silence equals white violence. Institutional inaction equals structural violence. By not acting, you're by default supporting systems that demean, exploit, hurt, and kill Black and brown people's bodies and souls. So you need to question yourself. We all need to question ourselves, because this is not only a question of white, okay? This is a system. We need to question ourselves in the very foundation and structure of our societies and systems. And it's important. We need to resist fallacies. Racism is not limited to a few bad people that have like their little white hoods. It's not the KKK people who are hateful and ignorant. It is in the DNA of a social construct. Think about it. Why is it okay for Northerners to go to the Global South countries and decide our fate without consulting us? Can you imagine us going and having the same attitude and approach in England, Geneva, Washington, Switzerland? You gotta be kidding people. So you have to think, even though, and question the fact that you're thinking it's normal, that it's just the way it's done, that anyway, that's the way the donors want it. Because we are all complicit in that. So, and we also have to stop seeing ourselves as being powerless, because the system wants that. We all have power and leverage. We all have power, personal power, institutional power, political power, financial power, okay? And I remember my son, my angry firstborn, when he was 11, telling me, oh, we adults had made a mess of the world. And I said to him, if we all, everyone, assume responsibility for their actions and did one thing to help the world, we would be in a better place, okay? So we need to use what I call our anti-racism muscle. At first, it's like, oh, we're out of shape or we haven't used it. It takes a little practice. What do I do? What do I say? I see somebody said something, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't comfortable. Well, you know, it gets easier with time, okay? It's a question of being proactive. We also need to go beyond that. The reality is that we cannot create structural change if we don't have the courage to think that things can be different. Think about it. I was reading, what is his name again? I think it's you. He wrote a wonderful article, and he talked about all we had to have the courage of being more creative and imagine a different world. Because the reality is that, think about it, you know, centuries ago, would anyone think that there would be a world without slavery? A world where women could vote? A world where a woman like me could actually speak up and not be arrested or raped someplace? Well, it could still happen, but never mind. Never mind that this. Okay, so we need to imagine a world without racism. We need to imagine systems that promote equality of access and opportunity. Having said that, I want to leave you, Arbie, I hope I'm not out of time. I want to leave you with one quote from a man who was misunderstood in his time, that people just saw as a loudmouth colored person, Muhammad Ali, okay? And I want you to hear that one. Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small men, I'll add women also, who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact. It's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration. It's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Temporary, people. Do you hear that one? It's temporary. Impossible is nothing. I invite you to dare, think, deconstruct, reconstruct our world and our systems and our day-to-day lives in a way that annihilates racism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Rose. That was really powerful. Now we will hand over to Naomi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending this important event. Thank you, Mary Rose, for setting the pace. I must applaud you. Those were strong points. I am Naomi Tulay-Solanke from Liberia. I am a feminist and an activist. So when I watched the George Floyd video over and over and watched the outrage of people who would never go up to protest and they were out there protesting, I felt it in my stomach to protest within my walls of my room because the issues that everyone is protesting still exist. George Floyd is no more. But how angry are we? How are we rewriting the narrative to illustrate that we are angry, to change system so we cannot have more death like George Floyd or more death as it relates to racism? And it comes back to our own conversation today. How can you be anti-racist in the AIDS world? I run a local organization called Community Healthcare Initiative. My work started a couple of months just before the Ebola virus hit Liberia. And immediately my team and myself were so confused because the virus was new and we never had access to funding. We were a local organization headed by young people, and not just young people, but a young woman. So having access to funding would just be in operation for a couple of days. You all know it was a challenge. If you don't know, it is a challenge. So we immediately stopped. But there was something that compelled us to go back onto the street. The media doomsday report. Out of the thousands and millions of dollars that were being raised for Liberia, local actors, local initiated had no access to that funding because we needed a whole portfolio before we could access the funding to work. We were at the community level. The issues that affect the community affected us, but yet and still we couldn't have access to the funding that was being raised to save our own people and save our own lives. So we were left with no other alternative but to go on the street and sell tea from the back of my car. It was doing one of the initiatives that Action Aid Liberia recognized us and decided to partnership with us, and we were able to work in 117 communities in 7 of the 15 counties in Liberia. That's amazing. And that could only happen through local initiative. And immediately we were recognized to go to the World Humanitarian Summit. I was huge, and I was surprised that Action Aid had selected me to attend this big event. And at the World Humanitarian Summit, we were able to launch NIA, the Network of Emergency Aid Responders. And at that launch, I was on the panel, and our focus was empowering local-led initiative. That was in 2016. So go back. I am from Liberia. Before 2016, we had just survived 14 years of civil conflict, where we saw the women of Liberia very instrumental in bringing peace into our country. Yet instead, the aid system will only recognize and celebrate them, but not empower them to work. There is an elephant in the room, and we need to call it up. The only reason we are still talking about localization because the aid system is racist. The aid system recognizes that when you empower the local actors, they are going to be strong, they are going to develop their country, they are going to ensure and hold people to account. So we are not supposed to hold people to account. So we are supposed to be left to beg. So at the World Humanitarian Summit, we signed on. There was a lot of NGOs and even donors that signed on to the grand bargain that said, yes, 25% of aid that enter any country will be directly accessed by local actors. And just for a few reasons. And some of the reasons we all know, if you have been working in a country for over 50 years and nothing has changed, why are you holding back to change? Why are we holding back to change? And I'm gonna go, this is the same as you watch the video of George Floyd, this is the same way that you are stepping on other people's neck. It might not be through a live video that we all saw and we are so angry about, but the way we work, the way we choose to work, we also step on people's neck. It might not be fame. And we have refused to recognize localization. And localization is just a simple construct. Recognize local actor expertise, people who are affected by crisis, empower them, recognize their agency and leadership, strengthen it so that when you leave, when you pull out, they are able to live there, work, and develop that institution. They are able to work and build back the community better because they are part of the procedures. So when I was invited, when we started this whole panel, it was so interesting to me. I'm like, oh, aid and anti-racism. And Mary was like, Naomi, this is an interesting conversation. Yes, it is an interesting conversation, but we don't want to talk about it. It's the same with localization. We don't want to talk about localization. And we need to have this frank conversation. The issues that affect you in the global north might be the same issue that affect me in the global south, but the way you address the issue in the global north is quite different from the way I'm going to address my issue. So it is important that you invite me to the table when you are programming the way you want to work with the issue that affect me, so I can tell you how it affects me. My voice and my decision should be considered, and I should be part of the process. And that is simple. That is all we are asking for. That is all we are asking for. If we want to change, if we say change is now, it's for us to dismantle that thing that the people at the local level don't understand how to work. No, they do. But they don't understand the way you want them to work. The people at the local level knows how to work. They are working even before aid arrives. After aid leave, they continue to work. But what has happened is this, it's the institution that you built around them that they should know how to work your way. No. One size will never fit all. Now we have the COVID. We hear everybody talk about social distancing, but every time I hear about social distancing, it's worsening. Social distancing will never work in Liberia. For an example, we live in a society where 7 to 8 persons sleep in a room. It is a reality. If one person is sick, everybody is exposed to getting sick. Can we find how we are able to minimize the spread of COVID in a slum community like West Point? Yes, easy. We have asked the women in the community. Frequent washing of hands, it's applicable. Wearing a mask, it's applicable. Social distancing will never be. It's because of our way of life. It's because these people live in poverty. They don't choose to live that life. This is how they have, this is where they have been positioned by society. So you cannot impose something on it. It's an extra burden for them. So when we are formulating our way of working within the aid system, when we want to have structure change within the way we design our program, our implementation, it's for us to recognize that we cannot sit in New York and decide what happened in Liberia. We have to come down to the community, sit with the community people and ask them what is applicable. You cannot decide that everybody in Liberia, all we need is rights. No, people's needs are specific, it is different. We need to change the way we work. During the war, all I saw my parents was we needed to stand on the line to get oil and beans. There were days that I was sick, but no one was giving medication. There were days that my sister had a period. No one was giving sanitary pads. Everybody was giving rice, beans, and oil. If we have had a town hall meeting where community people who have said their needs, everybody's needs will have been met at least to some extent, than to assume that all of our needs were just food and mosquito nets, maybe. We say that to say that you can be an anti-racist in the aid system. You don't have to say you're a racist person, or you don't have to do things that say, oh, this is racist. No. Once you are silent, you are not willing to change, you are being part of the racism that is within aid. And there are a few things you can do. Empower local actors. They have the agency, they have the leadership. Work along with them. Do equal partnershiping with them. Understand that they have the agency. Ask people for their needs when you go into community. Don't assume their needs when you sit in your big meetings. Empower local actors. Have local actors on your team. We know we have experts in everything. We have all of them. But the local expert is needed as it relates to the local application of aid. So once we start to recognize and take these mechanisms into our hands, we're going to see there are going to be a lot of shift into the aid system. And one of the things we need to do that you want to change, if you want to have a shift into the aid system, if you're sitting at that decision table, form local-led initiative. I have seen thousands of GoFundMe by powerful local-led organizations, but because they don't know you from Africa, you are not going to be funded. We need to start funding the white privilege institution. We saw that in my country, Haiti Media. She funded an organization called More Than Me, and thousands of girls were raped and molested in Liberia. We saw George down in Kenya. He raped thousands of girls as a Christian missionary. Even within the aid system, we saw Oxfam kids. He used the power of donor money to exploit young girls, and it was swept under the carpet. I did an op-ed on that, and I said the entire world is surprised about what happened in Oxford. I weren't surprised, because we live in a society where we saw 8 people misuse their power and the privilege and impregnated girls, molested girls, and it all went unchecked. It all went unchecked. And this is the system we have celebrated. It is about time that we call it off. It's about time that we check it out. It's about time that we all collectively change, so that when we say it should present that dignity, and it should have that collective effort, and we will dismantle whatever racism that is in it. We know it might not happen this year, it might not happen next year, but we are starting it now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you for your powerful speech and sharing of your experience and insights. Now we can hand over to Stephanie.
Yeah, Naomi and Marie-Rose, thank you so much for framing all of this. My heart is beating so fast because I've actually never heard some of the things you guys have said in international aid in such a public forum. And it's really emotional and it's really triggering for me, because a lot of Black people in aid and humanitarian work are fighting for their humanity and are fighting for space to do the work for Black people like us. And I just want to thank you guys. I'm really like, I'm so moved by you guys, what you're sharing. I have a definition I want to start with. The definition is for white supremacy culture, okay? And I'll type this in. But white supremacy culture is the specific ideology stating that white people and their ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and actions are superior to those of people of color. White supremacy culture is the reason we're having this discussion, because this discussion is not for Naomi, me, Marie-Rose, and Arbie. It's for white people to understand that we may not be able to continue to work in this space because of white supremacy culture. And you don't have to be a white supremacist to support white supremacy culture. You don't have to be a racist to support white supremacy culture. But I'm going to give you guys a list of how probably all of the white people on this call have supported white supremacy culture in international aid and humanitarian network and humanitarian sector. So I want to ground us in the truth, okay? White supremacist culture is all white leadership at the major INGOs and foundations that work mostly on the continent of Africa, in the Caribbean, in Southeast Asia, in other parts of Asia. That is white supremacy culture. The fact that Black people on the continent of Africa are not able to lead institutions where the majority of their budgets are being spent in their community. White supremacy culture. Inequitable pay scales. If you know for a goddamn fact you are getting paid more than people on the continent or in the Caribbean, Black and brown people, because you live in North America and you live in Europe, and you know for a fact that people on the continent in formerly colonized and developing nations that you say you're in support of and you're partnering with, that they are being paid less than you to do more work than you are doing, to be the connecting point for the communities. If you know for a fucking fact you are making more money than people, you are participating in white supremacy culture. If you are working and trying to tell a story and you are tokenizing Black and brown people and you are using motherfucking poverty porn that Black people have to see every day we walk into your damn offices, you are perpetuating white supremacy culture. If you work in that office and you can't take those photos down, if you can't talk to your comms team about how they're working and how they're portraying Black people who look like me, who look like Marie-Rose, who look like Naomi, people of color who look like Arbie, fuck your organization, you are perpetuating white supremacy culture. If you are still going hard and riding for organizations like Oxfam, who have, like I think Naomi, you pointed it out, the sexual assault that Black women had to go through because of white supremacy. And you're still riding for Oxfam, you're still riding for these institutions. You see Women Deliver, and you know that their CEO is a racist, and you're still there, and you're still riding for them. You're participating in white supremacy culture. If we're even talking about localization, like Naomi, I actually shed some tears hearing you talk, because that's something for my entire career in this sector. I have had to listen to white people talk about localization and buy-in for people who look like me. That's a conversation. Like, oh, we really, really want to leave this project to the people who are there. How do you think that makes the people who are there feel? How do you think that makes our Black selves feel when we have to have a discussion about buy-in for us to control the budget, for us to control the implementation and the monitoring in our own countries, in our own communities? The conversation about localization and buy-in and local ownership is some bullshit. We all need to call it out. And I'm talking to every Black person on this call. We also need to call it out, because that is white supremacy culture, the fact that we're having a conversation on localization. Naomi, thank you for bringing that up. The fact that white women can talk about gender mainstreaming and be uncompromising, relentless, moving, move money, make sure there are policies in place, make sure programs are held accountable to funders to ensure that transformative approaches to gender mainstreaming in our sector is important, and white women can't do that for racism in this sector, is white supremacy culture and also white feminism. We know how that has protected Black women historically. It hasn't. I was being sarcastic. The fact that we're here, the fact that in our busy schedules, Arbie had to bring us all together to speak this truth, had to stop Marie-Rose, had to stop Naomi, had to stop me from doing the work we're doing for Black people, to have this goddamn discussion for white folks to understand that we have a serious problem. I am triggered, I am emotional, I am calling out the bullshit. Like, we don't need this conversation, Arbie. I think you know that. All of us, all the panelists know that. We don't need this goddamn conversation. We have our own Black and brown secret meetings and secret emails about problematic and racist white people every day. I am not lying. Every day. So this conversation isn't for us. This is for white people to understand we are not going to be able to survive in this sector because of white supremacy culture, or we will just burn the shit down. Honestly, burn the whole AIDS sector down. Like, I am so triggered by how white folks are approaching this right now, are being so fragile, are thinking, what can I do? Whole time you're making 100K and your counterpart in Nairobi or Dakar or Haiti or Liberia is making half what you're making. Start with your actions and start really unpacking how you are perpetuating white supremacy culture. Here are 4 things that you can do. Number 1, accept racism. Again, you don't have to be a racist to support white supremacy culture. I know the last thing white people want to be called is racist, okay? I know that comes back on us, and then we're blacklisted for calling a white person racist. Whatever, I won't call you racist, but I will not call you anti-racist if all you can say is that I'm not racist. All you're doing is saying I'm not racist. That's not enough. It's not enough to say you're not racist. What are the steps that you're taking to actually dismantle white supremacy culture? Okay, so accept that you've probably had a racist thought in your mind, accept that you've done some racist shit, accept that you have silenced Black women, accept that you have silenced men of color, Black men, and say, okay, what are my actions? What is my goddamn blueprint moving forward to dismantle this? Number 2, have an exit strategy. Wherever you're sitting, whatever you're doing, kind of back to Naomi's point, how are you exiting? Because one thing I know to be true, white supremacy culture is not going to stop white people from marginalizing us. But if we are able to at least get white folks in positions of power to think about an exit strategy, so you're not for 50 years working in Haiti and taking and monopolizing all the power and monopolizing all the money, the millions of dollars that other white folks are giving to other white folks to do work for Black people. Think about it, discuss it, make it a priority in your work plans. What is our exit strategy? We're saying we're building the capacity of these Black people. What is your exit strategy? You're not building the capacity. You're creating a workload for yourself. You're creating, like Naomi said, a structure to perpetuate white supremacist culture, okay? I thought I had 4 points, but I lost the other 2. But I do wanna also hit on what both Naomi and Marie-Rose said about elevating local expertise. It's the least, God damn it, it's the least any of you on this call could do, is to follow people on Instagram, follow Black people on Twitter, read their goddamn books, buy their goddamn books, recommend them, invite them to speak at your institutions, invite them to co-research for you. Stop calling the 3 Black people you know in the world and having us send you a list of other Black people that we trust because you don't know any. It's not okay, it's not enough. And yeah, so Arbie, I'm sorry to you for inviting me to this space. Thank you though. I'm happy that I was able to support my sisters, Naomi and Marie-Rose, in this space. I'm always here to support you. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Wow, that's really amazing. I don't think I've ever seen the level of frankness anywhere else in the sector, really, apart from this moment. I'd like to sort of like just pick a few points that you've raised, and then we can open up to the Q&A, which people have been voting and posting their questions. Something that you said, Naomi, was really powerful. You said, you should be invited to the table as someone who knows and is an expert of their context. Why do you think, what in your sort of like experience have been sort of like the barriers of you being invited to the table, and how can people challenge that? And I asked this because there was a recent article by someone called Corinne Gray in the new Humanitarian, I think, and this is exactly what she said. Like, I've been overlooked for promotions. I've been overlooked in meetings. They didn't give me a promotion because they said nobody's gonna believe me or nobody's gonna respect me. So, any thoughts around that? And also from Marie-Rose and Stephanie, if you want, why aren't you being invited and what people can do about it?
Simple is that this is a Black woman in Africa, especially Liberia. Why are we inviting her? And it's kind of sad in the sense that even after they have the war is developed, or they have formatted what they want you to work with. So at our organization level, when I had opened my organization, my dream was to promote healthcare and social services. But trust me, I had done advocacy, I had done construction work, because I have to be donor driven. Donors or NGOs are not going to support your ideas. They are calling you on the table to work their ideas. Even your idea is unique, it's something that you dream about, that you are specific about the change in your community, they are not going to support it. They are going to support specifically what they have decided at the international level and expect you to work with it. And we're saying that it needs to change. It needs to change because the needs of people are different. It's not what you dream about, it's not what you think about, it's not what you see on television. Come and have conversation with people so you can know what specific their needs and their dreams are and what are the change they want to drive in the community. That is localization. That's going to be sustainable because it's something that someone is passionate about. We need to change it. It's not happening within the aid system.
I also want to say, I want to add, I completely agree with you, Naomi, But I also want to say that very often people will want the people that they are inviting to just agree with them. So if you are outspoken, if you speak your truth, if you don't conform, you get disinvited. I have gotten disinvited for questioning, being in a room where we were going to be talking about this community-led initiative, but it was all happening in the United States. And I said, well, if it's a community-led initiative, why are we starting it in the United States? Well, I'm no longer invited to this, to these meetings, I can tell you that much. But besides that, you know, it's very interesting. There is Shirley Chisholm, who was the first actually woman to be a candidate to be for U.S. president, to be a U.S. president candidate, Black woman. And she has this saying that I think is wonderful. She says, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Okay? And I think it's a wonderful idea, and I love the saying. But here's a story. What if you can't even get in the room? Okay? And we all know. I mean, I see you, Stephanie. I see you, Naomi, and Arbie, you're shaking your head. Yeah. Very often, we can't even get into this. And we Black women, forget about the glass ceilings. We're talking about concrete here, and we have to drill. I'd be happy if it were glass. I would just like break that damn ceiling easily. It's drilling. We have to drill. So I think we want to sort of like make it clear, because Stephanie, you made a very important point, because it's like racism, white supremacy can still exist without, frankly, sort of like white people, because it's so ingrained. And we talk about diversity, we talk about representation, but we need to be careful, because very often, in order to protect themselves and sustain themselves, these systems will pick tokens, will pick people that will not walk the boat, that will not question, that will not seek structural change, and that will sometimes, I hate to say it and I'm ashamed to say it, but it's the truth, will embrace the anti-local, anti-Black initiative and stand so that they can be accepted and promote their own interest. If we need to be honest, we're having an honest conversation, and this is the point. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Something that was really powerful as well as Stephanie giving the definition of white supremacy culture, which is, you know, basically saying white ideas, thoughts, and actions and belief are superior to POC. And I feel that this is, in fact, the root of, you know, why local people are not seen as the experts, or why local people are not seen as, or Black and brown people are not seen as having the knowledge in their own context or in their own society. And I want to sort of like hear, you know, why is this so hard to change in our sector? Like, what, like, if people are not being consciously white supremacist, what are the specific things in our system, or what are the specific behaviors that people do personally that perpetuates this idea that their way of thinking is more superior than Black or brown people? And this goes for everyone as well.
Yeah, I mean, how does that white supremacy culture kind of show up? I think it is some of the things I was mentioning, but I think the fact that international aid is built, and I think this is one of the questions is built on the foundation of colonization, especially in formerly colonized nations, especially on the continent, especially in the Caribbean where Black people exist, where brown people exist. We were ravaged and colonized and stripped of a lot of pieces of us that were essential to our identities, because French, Portuguese, German, British came into our spaces and totally decided, from the Berlin Conference till honestly right now, what is good and what is right and what is beautiful on the continent. And so if that's the foundation of international aid and humanitarian and charity, is the fact that we colonized and enslaved these people, it's by design. International development is racist as shit by design. It was meant to be this way. It's not because there were 3 racist white men 100 years ago who started Save the Children or woo woo whatever. No, it's cross-cultural. It's cross sector. And so anybody who knows any Black people right now truly knows, whether they are in the education, health, fashion, beauty, journalism, everyone's having a reckoning, because white supremacy culture is built on the enslavement of Black people. And white supremacy culture is able to perpetuate and grow and be fed because all of us are just used to racism. We're all used to racism. And we're all used to getting paid less. We're all used to white women forgetting to put us on emails and then we miss the meeting. We're all used to all of these microaggressions that really place Black people in a position where it's not a glass ceiling. Hell no, it's a concrete ceiling. And for me, I think that there's not many people who can make the connection of, wow, we're really racist right now because international aid and development was built on colonization, which was one of the most violent and racist forms of, existence. The transatlantic slave trade, the genocides at the hands of white people for people of color. That's where we built our sector on. So goddamn, of course, like this is a racist sector. Of course, white people are all the people in positions of power. And honestly, I don't even want to answer the question of what do they do next. Like, white people need to talk to each other and decide in whatever study groups, make soup together, whatever white people do on their free time. Do some stuff together that allows you to unpack how white supremacy culture is happening around you. You can't keep pulling in, like you're dragging Black people in, like, oh, and we're like, oh, we're tired. We're like, this is a lot for us. Do it on your own. Don't Instagram us about it. Don't email us about it. Do it with your people and figure out how racism is showing up in your institutions. I'd love to hear what Naomi and Marie-Rose think about that specific idea of what can be done to dismantle white supremacy culture and what they're saying to the white people in their lives, because I'm having a very hard time being helpful besides just raging out on platforms like this.
I'm with you, sis. I'm with you. I don't know how to explain to someone to understand the humanness of someone. I don't know how to explain for people to value dignity in people. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to explain the power of a human being that exists next to you. I don't know how to make someone to recognize that. It is impossible. You cannot teach it. It's something that exists. See it, acknowledge it. You cannot be taught it. You have to dismantle because your privilege have allowed you to access these spaces. So you have refused to have the conversation. And when we are having it, you're like, oh, I'm not like them. You are not talking about it. If you benefit from the white supremacy and you don't talk about it, you are part of it because you are the beneficiary of that system. So we are saying, speak about it. Recognize that there is a system that has oppressed Black people. And now within the aid system, we have seen a strong, powerful women have been elevated or finally recognized, and they are there. They don't respect them. So recognizing that I am your superior is one, but respecting that I come with the agency and leadership is another thing that we need to dismantle right here. If you have a boss that is Black and it's a woman and you don't respect her, you are the racist. And it is the system. And if you don't understand the way I talk, I am not responsible because I also struggle to understand the way you talk. I am not. So these are the things we need to talk about. You cannot teach it. You cannot teach it. Yeah, I just.
Thanks so much for that.
What I will have to say, as I'm having the time of my life, I'm really loving this. Arbie, thank you. I mean, at any rate, here are the things. This is insidious because I have, and you're right, Stephanie. I have to give you a little bit of sense. I learned how to read before I was 3 years old. So even though it's something I've been comfortable with, the reality is that sometimes that I have a high IQ, I absorb information, I'm highly intelligent, blah, 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 right? It's amazing. I mean, for me, when I came to this country and I was just like, you gotta be kidding. They actually think I'm inferior and I'm less intelligent and I can do less because of the color of my skin. I said, wow, it kicked me. I mean, I got kicked in the behind, seriously, because I just could not believe it. I wasn't necessarily an overachiever because I could just do my thing and be at the top of my class very easily, and I was focused on learning outside and everything else. So my thing is, I must say to you that I'm always flabbergasted and horrified. And to a certain extent, I want to say horrified to the extent where the minute I accept it, because I talk about how I get up and every day I have to wear an armor because I am guaranteed, and no, this is not an illusion, people. There are studies that are now documenting this. This is not urban legends. It is true. People will discount you because of the color of your skin. People will discount me because I'm a Black woman. Oh, God damn it. Oh, let's not forget that I like to put myself together. So I must be flaky because I like to put myself together and I put makeup on. Let's not forget that piece. And then, she has an accent. She has an accent. There is actually, I believe it's a Harvard study that says automatically. One of my first experiences, I remember, I stand up completely in love with my husband. I'm staying here and I'm calling about a job. I'm trying to make my way here. And I called and I said about a job. And it wasn't even that good of a job, And I said, no, I'd like to get some information about this position. And the woman said, we are looking for someone with education. And she hung up the phone on me. I was speechless. And you must understand the way I talk and I'm outspoken. It's very rare that I'm speechless. I was shocked. I was flabbergasted. I was crushed. I was scared. All right? And I am used, and I've had to fight it. I've had to fight it. I am used to being discounted based on all of this. And every once in a while, because I've built my network, I've built my world, okay, of amazing people and, and my community, I still get blindsided, okay? Like about 3 years ago, I interviewed for this high level position, 9 interviews, people, and got to sit down with this donor. She came and the HR person was there and she just said to me, and I said, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. Not naturally, I'm dressed to the nine, I've got everything looking business-like as if, you couldn't believe, whatever. I'm ready. This is the last step. I'm gonna get that job, right? She looked at me and she said, what a weird accent. And I said, I just, it's like, what the F? And I said, And I looked at her and she said, it wasn't the end. She said, you should have put something in your resume. At that point, I looked at her and I'm like what? Like a sample something on social media to show I have an accent and to whatever. What is it? And I'm expecting her, I'm being sarcastic. I'm expecting her to back off, right? No, did not back up. She went, did not apologize. And she said, is that kind of French? She'd read my stupid resume. So all of a sudden, there's no longer interest. And this is for a large organization that promotes equity. I could not believe it. It had nothing to do with my qualifications. It had nothing to do with my track record. My references talk about, oh, I walk on water, people. So had nothing to do with that. It was pure prejudice. So what I want to say is that if people can sometimes because they may think themselves as a separate thing, but think about us as human beings, as equal human beings. And I'm not being dramatic because it's the reality of what we're experiencing. And say, oh, what if the positions were inverse? How would I feel? So cultivate that empathy, cultivate that humility. And I want to say that we're all, we all have to do it. So it's not just white people, but we all have to do it. But there's this sense of privilege and superiority. So as in, we can learn, and learning is a two-way process. And we don't know everything. We're not the expert. It may be a start. At this point of my life, I want to encourage leaders, and especially young leaders. Like Arbie, you give me hope. I want people who just try to facilitate change. I want people who have no patience for bullshit. I want the young generation, okay, to come and take the leadership and say, we're tired of that. We want to reconstruct things. Because whatever it is, we can't get a light bulb out of a candle. It's time for us to be able to see a light out of the tunnel, okay? And the candle won't do, no matter how much scenting and whatever else we can add and, whatever, add another candle, it will not give you a freaking light bulb. So think about whatever works for you, because we are all different. And if it's perhaps think about yourself. How would I feel? Not make assumptions. Not assume that I don't speak English well, that I don't write it well, that I'm not professional, that I'm not qualified because I'm a Black Haitian woman and I was making assumptions about me, my background, my education, my intelligence every day. It would be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary Rose. Now we can go to the questions from the audience. The top question is around colonialism, and you've touched upon this, how sort of like the aid sector is built on colonialism. So there's a question here. Can it ever be truly anti-racist, the sector? Much like, the police and criminal justice system in the US, I suppose, if it's built on that. And there's also another question that says, how can we do this? Do we just scrap it, like defund the police, like just scrap the aid system and maybe create something new? Is this the best way to do it? So any thoughts on that? Anyone?
I don't think the best way, I said, one of the ways is that support local initiative. The people who are affected by crisis and disaster are at the community level. Recognize them and support them. They have the agency and leadership. That is simple. If you want to give grant to an INGO, ensure that they have a code applicant or local actor that is a code applicant, they are applying together, not giving the money to the INGO and asking them to go back and look for who to work with. No. I think we need to start to look at equal partnershiping, support equal partnershiping, respect, mutual respect, accountability. Accountability not as it relates to accountability, but accountability to the people in whose names we are raising this money for. Accountability to the children picture that we take with the flag dropping from the mouth and say, this is the only story we got from Africa. Is that kind of accountability? Is that when you raise the money with that sorrowful picture, it's not for your fat check and paying your rent. It's to change and transform the life of the young child that you just exposed to the world without the acknowledge, without them even giving consent to that picture. It's that sort of accountability. It's your conscience to say, I raised the money and I changed that village life. I just think that we need to refocus, redirect the way we distribute funds as it relates to aid. Not having a big money on human resource and direct implementation is very, very little. Like, I can give you an example. I have been to over 6-7 meetings that have flew me out of Liberia just to come back and be given 10,000 to work with. And when I calculate the money that was given for the airfare, the hotels I slept in, and I came back, I only had 10,000. I'm like, you should have given me the money to stay right here and work and change the lives and impact my community. It's actual, but that's the reality.
Damn, Naomi. God damn it. That's the damn truth. That is something I just need to say that drives me crazy, is how much these white-led institutions are paying our Black asses to fly around the world to be their token in their meetings and their opening ceremonies and their goddamn whatever. And then you get back, especially Black women, especially African and Caribbean women, you get back and they have spent more on moving your Black body to the US than giving you to work with your own community. I think that's a perfect personification of what the aid sector is. I am working myself as a Black woman living in America to reimagine a future for myself that's anti-racist. I haven't gotten there yet. I don't know if this sector could ever be anti-racist. I don't know what that would look like, but if I can point to people who need to be in positions of power, Black women can figure that shit out. Black women should be funded to figure what an anti-racist future should be. Black women should be given the money to delegate and to host events and to host major conferences. Black women should be given $10 million a year in budgets to work in their community, the same way these white women in New York and Geneva and London are given. And so, no, I don't have the answers. I'm still hoping that I can find that answer for myself as a Black woman who, exists. But if anyone could figure out how to make international development, humanitarian sector anti-racist, it is Black women. Stop silencing your Black colleagues. Stop overlooking them for promotions. Move out of the way and really, really, really see that Black women are so much more equipped, so much inherently born this way, equipped. Don't have to get ready because they stay ready, equipped to do this work.
Great, thank you. Another question, there are a lot of questions around language. So, and I feel this is actually quite an old conversation within the sector about, beneficiaries and capacity building. But maybe a way that we could level up this is, what is the anti-racist language that we should also be incorporating in our conversation? So yeah, if you can comment on how to address the racist language, like low capacity beneficiary, and how to incorporate new language in our work.
I mean, shouldn't white people be thinking about this? Shouldn't they be telling us in the comments? Because I don't call Black women low capacity. I don't say I'm building the capacity of Black people. I don't say I'm building your capacity, Arbie. Do I? Have you seen any Black women do that to you? No. Ask them in the chat. What are you guys using and replacing your language with? Like somebody said, do the work. Absolutely do the work. If Naomi and Marie-Rose have the time to think about that, they will share. But I honestly feel like that responsibility on language, I didn't call Côte d'Ivoire, where I'm from, developing. I wasn't born and thought, oh, look at my nation, it's developing. No, it's a beautiful nation. I love all the Black people there. It's poppin', I love it, it's cool. So I would never call it developing. That is their language. That is white supremacist culture language. So ask these white folks in this chat, what have you been using to replace developing nation, low capacity, whatever else is being used. It's just a suggestion, but put the onus on them.
What I will say, because people talked about language, and I was just like, first of all, yeah, I know I'm talking and we're talking, but I'm tired of talk. I'm tired of terminology. I don't know how many people that I've said, well, obviously, let's not forget I'm not a racist, but I am so committed to community-led, development or blah, 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 and whatever. And you see them in real life and it's like, huh? Seriously? So at this point, I want to see how people act, and they should worry more about how they act. And sometimes I do things because I have my edges. I'm not that sweet little woman that I seem to be. But I once was in a meeting of funders, and I basically said, and people were introducing themselves, and I said, I'm Romain Murphy. I'm the co-founder of ESPWA, the co-founder of Haiti Community Foundation, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, and I'm from the richest country in the world of the Western Hemisphere as far as history, culture, and the spirit of our people. And I will tell you, I meant every single word of it. But very often it's very acceptable in mainstream culture, which I can never fit in, to sort of like understate, and everything else. Everybody was shocked because they said, what? But, it led them to think. And I want people to think that way. Yeah, we have our issues, but, and I could go about history, and I'm not interested in just blaming sort of like the white stuff, even though there's plenty of blame to go there. But we have to take responsibility for our action, okay, and lead our nations. But what I will tell you, okay, as far as I'm concerned, I think, I want to see action. I don't want people just going in terminology and hide being terms and whatever, meanwhile, while having completely toxic actions. So first of all, think about what you do and what you say, because one word can be, and I wish sometimes it were not true. I wish I would completely close myself and did not care. And it's not because I'm a strong woman that I am not sensitive, as I choose to remain open. But just a single little thing, word or whatever, can be so hurtful because it is so demeaning. So, I think all I would have to say, and I don't want people to be scared about saying things or whatever. I'd rather have people just say, okay, what the heck do I do? What the heck, whatever, or something like that, but interact as genuine people. I am tired of fake people walking around, and politically correct people that are basically, by the time your back is turned, they will not, fund you. They will question to death. You will continue to have to jump through 20,000 hoops before you get that small grant, and they will sort of like use you as tokens and everything else, and you will not be like in true partnerships. I get so tired of all of this. Okay, so do we want to talk words? We want to talk terms. We want to be able to feel like we are doing the right thing. Just do the damn right thing.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary Rose. I guess like last question or last few questions. Let's see if we have time. Just because we're running out of time, and then we'll get to the sharing of the actions part. There are a number of donors in the audience. So from USAID, from DFID, and they're asking, what role they can play in order to, dismantle the racist system. And also, I'm highlighting that. Today, actually, DFID has been merged with the Foreign Office in the UK. So if you have any comments around that, anyone?
I think DFID signed on to localization. They should understand that the aid is where the needs are, and it's at the community level. We need to stop the intermediaries. These things are not they are not making the change. If we have been working in community 50 years and we see no change, why are we not empowering the local actors? And when we come back to say terminology, because we have been accustomed to terminology, this is how we have been made. And they are building our capacity. No, local actors' capacity is already built. All we need is for you to strengthen it. It needs finance. The reason local actors are not doing much than the INGOs because they don't have access to the funding that the INGO have access to. That's just it. The difference is money, access to money. If the same money that has been given to INGO, to whatever organization is given to local-led initiative, the change will be visible and it will be more sustainable. So it's about time that I said it, and I'm going to say it again. Start to ensure that INGOs are applying with local-led organization on an equitable scale, not on a contract basic. No. If you want to see change in the community, let us start to invest in local movement, because the local action is sustainable. Local action is where the change happens. The issues that affect people in the community affect the local actors. And if we want to get rid of sexual harassment into the aid system, it's to empower the local people. Because the white people come with their white privileges, they rape, they abuse, they sexually assault, and they are left with impunity because they are our white savior. We need to change the narrative. We need to. So DFID, US, whoever is on this call, let us take a visible action from here. Go back to your meeting and start to demand the change that we are requesting right now. Then we know you're a strong ally. Then we know you are anti-racist in the aid system.
Thanks. Yeah, Mary Rose?
I want to talk numbers. And how much money goes into of the money that goes into local communities, as far as local organizations and local businesses. I want to say that it's been abysmal in Haiti. At one point we were talking about, and please people, hear me out, because I'm not trying to shame specific organizations. I just want to talk structure. So don't take it personally. When we are talking about, okay, less than 5%, then less than 2%, then less than 1%, going to local organizations and looking into businesses. When you're talking about after earthquake, when 0.6% at one point, after a few years, only 0.6%, less than 1% was going to local organizations and businesses. What does that spell out? And I know there is the PR and there is the talk about working with the local partners and everything else, but the devil is in the details. And as much as I would like to want to believe that people want equal partnership. The truth is in the numbers. When you have sectors that are giving less than 2% to Global South, local and national organizations, whether we're talking about humanitarian or development, when you have COVID-19, and I wake up and I read that if you exclude the local chapters of Red Cross, what we're talking about is, was it 0.1% of COVID-19 in the age where people cannot travel or whatever is actually going to local organization? This is, you know, so unacceptable. So please, I understand that people have their comfort level. I'm at a point where it is not that I don't have a level of anger, but I'm thankful that I'm older and I've been around the clock, and it's not that I'm like beaten down, but I'm just like, yeah, I've seen that. What can I do? How can I channel my energy? How can I make a difference? And at that point, I don't want to hear talk. I want people walking their talk. I want people to stop hiding behind excuses. I want people to hold themselves accountable, as opposed to going and doling out hundreds of millions to their usual partners because it is easier. There are ways. There has been enough research. There has been enough, pilots. There has been enough evidence. And I don't want to hear anymore, or we should be patient. I don't know how long I have, because I don't take it for granted, especially nowadays. All right? I would like, before I die, to see that we are actually on a pathway to make sure that aid is no longer needed, as opposed to getting on a pathway of dependency. Aid should be making sure that aid is no longer needed, and that it's actually aligned with the needs of community, not on completely what the agendas. And I'm not talking about not being accountable to donors and funders, for goodness freaking sake. I'm not talking about being able to do whatever I want with the money and not have to answer. But I'm just talking about beyond sort of accounting and, financial statements. I got an MBA just to be able to put it in people's face and say, I have an MBA. I understand these financial statements. I can actually do the freaking job, okay? But then the numbers will not necessarily justify the action and will not necessarily meet the needs of the community if you're not asking them what they need, and if you're not meeting these needs, and if you're not seeing them as human beings and leaders.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time. We now would like to invite participants, if you want to share the action that you commit to take to be anti-racist in aid. We've sent you the link in the chat, and then it takes you to a website where you can type the concrete commitments that you want to take to be anti-racist in aid, and we'll be sharing some of it as well. I'm going to be sharing my screen so that you can all see it. Can you see that? Great. Thank you so much, everyone. And we also talked about doing the work. And so my colleague Alara will share on the chat box as well some of the resources that have been compiled by others. One is specific for the aid sector, and then the other one is just general resource on how to be anti-racist. You can look through these resources to do the work and avoid asking Black and POC people questions before you've done the work. And you can take this away and look at it. And yes, we will be, we have recorded this. We will endeavor to post it as soon as we can, and then we will share it. Alara will also be sharing the link where we will be posting it. Yeah, so I guess like some of the things here and the actions that people are committing to take is, as a white person, I commit to calling out every micro and macro racist aggression in my organization and hold white leaders to account until we see meaningful and systemic change. I want to change the policies within my organization to empower women of color from the global south to improve our work. Challenge superiors more, listen, respect, amplify voices of community representatives. Acknowledge my own privilege and remind people of theirs and what we can do to take a step back and shut up at times. Great. I'll also try to figure out whether it's possible to download these commitments and, you know, add a link to it later on so that you can be reminded of the commitments that you are going to take. Any last words, Stephanie, Naomi, Marie-Rose, before we end the session?
I was just going to share what another white woman shared with me a couple weeks ago, and she said, when I sit with discomfort and I feel really uncomfortable and I feel really embarrassed to be a white woman in that moment because I have to face fear of the fact that I may have done something, that makes me know I'm lacking capacity in something and I need to build that capacity. And so I just wanted to leave people with that if you're sitting here right now, like feeling very fragile, feeling very called out, feeling very like uncomfortable, that means there's a capacity in your mind that's missing for you to be able to work through it. And so there are so many resources, especially Black women nowadays, that are free online that you can use and find yourself. If you Google it, you will find it, resources that can help you deal with the lack of capacity that you may have to deal with racism. And also, Arbie has done such an amazing job putting this together. If you guys are going to share this recording, you need to be also slipping him some money into whatever Venmo, PayPal that he has for putting this together. I think Naomi, Marie-Rose also have NGOs and initiatives that they are leading in their countries. I hope, Arbie, you can share all of the links to donate to their initiatives as well. And please don't think that this was something that was easy for us to do, that we loved. You know, I had a great time with my sisters, but it takes a lot out of us to show up and say these things. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of time. And so compensate the Black people and the brown people who are educating you every day. Send Arbie some money, send Naomi and Marie-Rose some money to support the initiatives that are going to change your institutions.
And sorry, I believe you have a course upcoming, Stephanie. Do you want to say something about that?
Oh, yes. I'm doing an anti-racism course that has a wait list right now. And so if you guys go onto the PopWorks website, you can find all of our offerings there, www.popworksafrica.com or .org. I don't even know my own website. And so you can find the course there. We have a decolonizing development webinar. We have the course. We have a decolonizing development e-course, lots of stuff on the website. But please send your money to these beautiful women on this call who have shared more than they needed to, honestly. Everyone here is lucky to have heard Naomi and Marie-Rose speak.
I think you're on mute, Marie-Rose.
Let me unmute. I want to thank Arbie for his idea and his leadership and how much he's invested in all of this. And I also, Stephanie, I mean, I knew Naomi before, and it's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure. This is, and you're right, Stephanie. And we all know that it's draining. It is draining. It is not easy. We don't necessarily want to sit and be dramatic and everything else. It's painful. It's painful. These are the painful experiences we have to sit and then make sure that we transcend. So it is not easy for us. And, you know, I see wonderful people of all colors in my network, you know, in our field. And I'm just hoping that we can come together and really tackle things structurally. So, and I also, let's not forget the team. And I'm trying to remember all the names here. Tobias, Alara, I'm missing one, Arbie. There's another one. And I really want to thank everybody who sort of like helped make this possible. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for being part of this. I realize sometimes it's not easy.
So Ivy, I just want to say thank you. You are Jane, and this movement is not stopping here just from this hour 30 minutes conversation. This is something you have given birth to, that we all have participated and see it going live. So Stephanie, so Marie-Rose, I don't know how this panel who have been with all you amazing women. Like this is everything. This is us telling our story, our own truth. We usually don't get the space to be able to talk about truth and feel liberated and call it out. And today we were able to do it. To all those who have been very supportive in making the technical work happen, that this is well organized, I can tell you for a fact that thank you, everybody. Thank you to the team. And to all those who sign on to this webinar, I was so moved that the participant, as I look, I saw like 200. Just don't attend, but be that change. Go and be that change. Join the movement and institute it in your institution. We know that systemic change takes a long time, but it starts with one initiative, and be that initiative today. So we all can celebrate our freedom and our uniqueness as human beings, and we all can bury racism, because it don't build us, it divide us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights, expertise, and experience. And thank you to Tobias, Alara, and Andonis for helping out. And thank you to everyone who's attended. We'll be sure to share this recording later on. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.